management process. So the next thing is the creation of test cases. Okay, I think with some of the tutorial group I have go through the test cases. Some of you not yet. Okay, so you will need to develop and to execute the test cases for your assignment. Okay, another one more thing, please remind your tutor once they're done with the midterm marking, pass the script back to me, because I messaged, nobody replied me, I don't know what happened. Okay, I messaged them because I want to discuss the answer during the lecture hours, and also I want to get confirmation on the entered marks, and also for you to upload the scan copy. I want to do it all in the same day. So if your tutor want to discuss separately, then the date will not be same, because now you need to sign your midterm paper that we have discussed in the class. That data is part of auditing things. Like they are asking us what is the proof that we have written the midterm paper and we have discussed. Got it? So that's why I need everyone in the same date. If no, means it will not be steady. So in case if your tutor are not aware of that, because I dropped message, both of them didn't reply, so just inform them. Okay. Week 14 we have another one more public holiday, is it? Wednesday. So I will discuss your midterm on week 13. Once I receive from them, once I'm done the marking, then I will discuss and I return the copy to you. Okay, I don't want to forget this one. Okay, so as part of your assignment requirement, you are preparing test plan, and the next thing, according to your test plan, you will be preparing your test case. So test plan is the overall planning of your testing. What you plan to conduct, you are documenting them. So all the WH question you need to answer on your test plan. You know what is WH question, right? You know what is WH question, right? What, who, when, where, how. So all this is part of your planning. So who is part of the testing? Who will be in charge for this and that? When you plan to conduct the testing, what you are testing, how you are testing. All this is your test plan. So this test plan is your overall planning. So based on your test plan, what are the test items you want to test? Based on your test design technique, your number of test cases you identify, then you will start to prepare your test cases. Okay, so for our assignment, okay, just to recall back, this suppose should be your assignment test case template. This is not the only template in the market. There are many different templates according to different standards. So the one we are using for your assignment is this one. Okay. So we also have another one more as part of the practical thing. We have another one more test case template, which is slightly different compared to the one we are going to use for your assignment. Okay, so most of the standards are still the same. Okay, whatever the main items needed on the test cases, okay, will be there. So they should be, okay, the main items, whatever important items needed for the test execution will be always there. But sometimes different standard, they have simplified something, okay, they have not simplified something, they include something, they remove something, only those kind of difference. So I will discuss about the difference on those two test case templates. Okay, so the purpose of why we need to create the test case is because we want to know the exact detail steps or the test steps, test actions which we need to follow for us to test the test item. So let's assume we said, okay, we are testing this module A and this function A. So how we are going to test them? What data we want to use? What is the proper steps we need to use to test this function A? We cannot put that in the test plan, but we will come up with the test case template. So test case template is the detail of the step or the test steps or test action which we need to follow to test a test item. Got it? So that's why on your test case template, you will always have the test steps or the test action which we need to follow step by step. Okay? And you, let's assume you as the designer of the test case, you will not be the tester. Another tester will be the one going to use the test case and then to execute the test and then to fill up the result. So if you are not providing the test steps, test data accordingly, the tester will not know what is the right way to do the test execution. So that's why we need to have a standard test case template to be used. Okay? So what is test case? So test case has input and action and also expected result. Okay? So what we expect the system to do, what expected response we expect from the system. So that what need to be included in the test case. So when the tester do the test execution, when they get the actual result or the actual response, they will compare with the expected to know what is the status. So when it will be passed, when a test case will be mentioned as pass. You know, test case, there is a result to include, right? For example here, the status. When it will be passed. When a test result or test status will be passed. Nice reaction. Okay, we have expected result, am I right? So let's assume I'm the test designer here, test case designer. So I design the test case, I put this expected result and I pass the test cases to you guys where you will be the one going to execute it. So when you follow these test steps, you follow this test data, you are going to see the result. Am I right? So that result, is it expected result or actual result? Actual result. So when you are the tester, you execute this test case, you get the actual result. So now my question is, when the status will be passed and when it will be failed? You have two results. And how you will indicate either it's a pass or fail. Is my question so complicated? But the answer is very complicated, is it? Then, what is the answer? When it will be pass, when it will be fail. Which one? Yes, when the actual result, it means you as a tester, what you see is the actual result. If the actual result tallying with the expected result, this is what we expect and that is what exactly has happened, then the status will be passed. And when the actual result gives something else than what is mentioned in the expected result, then the status will be fail. Got it? Okay. So when the test execution happened, the purpose of the tester here see what is the actual result happen. So when both of these result they are tally, it means pass, no issue. But let's assume we get something else, then it is exactly what we are looking for, where we want to find the defect. So when the status is fail, it means there is a gap between the expected result and the actual result, and that gap is what we call as a defect. So we are going to identify the defect and we need to do the fixing for the defect. So just by having the test plan, we cannot do a test execution. We will not able to get the defect yet. So based on the test plan, we come up with the test case, we execute the test case, we check the result, then only we know the status of each test item we are testing. Is it pass or fail? If it's fail, then there is a defect. Then we are working on the defect. So normally, we don't only go with the positive. It means we are trying to break the rules of the system and to see what the system respond to us. So whenever we want to deliver out or we want to proceed with the test release, we must continue with the test execution for us to confirm with the status of the test before we can release it out. Okay. Okay, so test cases must cover every features of the application. So when we are preparing the test case, of course, we need to have proper number of test case because we cannot conduct exhaustive testing. Okay, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we able to cover every features of the function of the system or of the application. Okay, so that's why we always have positive test case and the negative test case, because we try to cover every requirement or every part of every single features of the application. Okay, so like what I've mentioned, each test case will have the set of the test steps to follow, and we will have the expected result to be compared with the actual result to determine what is the status. Okay, either it's a pass or fail, nothing else, only these two status. Okay, so when should we start to write test case? Do we have any specific timing when we can start? Let's assume we are following a very traditional software process model or methodology. Okay, when will be the right time to start? When we will start preparing or writing test case. Of course, test case need to be done before the testing. Okay, under software testing, whenever we are dealing in preparing software testing documentation, we always have three phases: before the testing, while conducting the testing, and after the testing. So test plan and test case must be done, must be reviewed, must be approved before the testing process will be started. Okay, that's why part of your test entry criteria, you can indicate the test plan and test case must be prepared before the testing going to start. So if it's not yet done, you did not fulfill that test entry criteria. Okay, so other than that, when can be the right time to start writing test cases? When? Okay, let's assume like what I said, if it's a very traditional process model or methodology, normally we will always wait for a complete SRS. Requirement. Can you start to work on test case without requirement? No. We still need to know what is the requirement. Either we are having a complete SRS. software requirement specification or not. That is the difference. But without a requirement, we cannot plan for the testing. We cannot plan for the test case at all. Okay, so when it comes to a traditional methodology, normally after a software requirement specification has been completed, has been reviewed, has been approved, then we can start to work on the test planning. So when we work on the test planning, then we can start work with the test cases. This is traditional. But is every company go with this now? Do they really spend time coming up with a complete software requirement specification when you cannot even finalize requirement, when client keep on changing the requirement? Is there any possibilities for me to say that, oh, this is the finalized SRS? No. So in nowadays methodology, which is not putting importance on documentation, okay, as long if we have requirement, it means not a complete requirement document. He's there? You're looking for him, right? Okay. So as long if we have requirement, not required a requirement complete documentation. Please try to understand the difference. Requirement means client just come and say to you that, okay, you need to add this function all of a sudden. Do you get? Because like for example, agile methodology, client work closely with the development team. So they can just come and say that, okay, this is the function and I want you to come up with this and add into this system. That is a requirement. So it is not required to come up with a complete requirement document as in traditional methodology anymore. But without the requirement, we cannot start work on the test cases. The difference is, are we having a complete software requirement document? Are we having a complete test plan document or not? So in the traditional, they will have this document. But in current methodology, we don't wait for this document on. So as long we have the requirement, we can start with the development ready. The same thing, once we're done with the development, we can start with the testing. So once we have the requirement, we can start to plan on the test cases. We can start to write on the test cases. So there is no proper documentation required in the latest methodology. And especially methodology nowadays, they are not working on a complete system once. They are working on a small pieces regularly to have a rapid test release. So as long if we have a requirement, so whatever requirement given, then we can start to write the test case to proceed with the test execution once done with the development. That's it. Okay, so there is a difference between the traditional methodology and the latest methodology. But whatever is it, the requirement is needed. Got it? So once we have the requirement, we can already know, okay, this is the requirement, this is what data needed, this is what we expect, then we can start to write the test case. Okay? Okay, so the techniques for developing test cases, of course, we have to test both sides, which is white box testing and the black box testing. So both of these techniques, we can prepare test case. Not only for functionality, but also for the non-functionality. So actually just now, when I was showing you example of this test case template, whatever details you are seeing there, it's actually from a source code, not from a GUI. So it means I have a source code and I am preparing this test case for me to test the source code. And I give this input, I want to see what is the output. So this is actually at the white box level. Okay, so test case is not only for black box like what you are going to prepare for your assignment, but when we have source code, when we have functionality which is having the input output, as a developers you can prepare the test case for you to keep track of the test result. So test case can be prepared by using the white box technique or black box technique. So the same thing, like remember when we discussed about your control flow graph. Your control flow graph, you translate the source code into a graph, and from the graph you identify the path. Am I right? Am I right? You calculate the cyclomatic complexity and then you identify the path. After you identify path, you are actually going to prepare the test case. So it means based on this part 1, okay, if I give this input, what happened? Part 2, if this input, what happened? So the next step actually to prepare the test case. But I stopped until identifying the path is enough. No need to prepare the test case for the source code because we will concern more on the black box. But actually test case can be developed for both of the technique. Okay. So writing test cases, so it is actually based on the requirement, the system specification or the user documentation. So based on what is given in the specification or based on what is given on the function, we will prepare the test case. Okay, so the test case can be white box testing to know the flow of the application or flow of the source code and also the function itself. Okay, so these are the items in the test case which you normally see. Okay, so these are the field, okay, like what I have said. I will show the template straight up. Okay, so I will use our assignment test case template first. Okay, so if you see the first item here is a test case ID. That hashtag is actually ID. So ID must be a unique identifier. So test case ID cannot be repeated. Got it? Cannot be repeated. Then test case name is to indicate what function we want to test. Okay. Then we have what is the system name, what is the module name, and then we have designed by who, executed by who, and then design date, execution date. So these two names cannot be same. Designed by who, executed by who cannot be the same. So for your assignment, okay, for your assignment, I'm talking to everyone, not only my tutorial group, but everyone, WRSD. So for your assignment, each of you have your own individual module, okay, and you have selected 2 functions, and you are required to prepare 5 test cases, combination of positive and negative test cases. So the test case which you are preparing for your 2 functions, you will put your name as designed by you. You are the designer of your test case. Each of you, the 5 test case for your own module, you are the designer. It will be your name. Got it? Once you're done, when we are doing the test case execution, you are going to pass your test case to your partner within the same assignment group. Let's assume you are 4 of you. So you will be exchanging where another person will be the executor of the test case. So it means you are designer of 5 test case for your module and you are the executor of 5 test case of another module. Clear? So I should not see same name under the designer and also under the executor. Okay. Then design date, execution date. Which one should be earlier? Design date. Can it be same? Yeah, I know. You will do on the same day, but it is not allowed. Okay? Test case must be designed earlier, must be reviewed, must be approved. And you don't say to me that all this will happen in the same day. Okay, we have a proper flow to follow. So designer date will be earlier than the execution date. Okay, so as part of your test plan, you need to prepare your testing scheduling. Am I right? So you will follow the 6 phases, of the STLC, correct? Software testing life cycle. So in that 6 phases, you have test case development, you have test case execution. So test case development is referring to the design date, test case execution referring to the execution date. So design date must be earlier than the execution date. Got it? Clear? The top part of the table. Okay, then after that we have short description. Okay, short description here is describing about what function you are testing and are you testing it in a positive way or in a negative way. So it means, are you using a valid data or you are using invalid data? Because here test case name is just the function name. So let's assume I said student login function. That is my test case name. But student login function, I can have 3 different test cases. Am I right? So under the short description here, I will specify to test student login function with valid student ID and password. That is my positive test case. With invalid student ID and valid password. With valid student ID and invalid password. So that will be describing more about the test case. Got it? Okay. At the back there, are you in my class? Are you in my class? Yes. Can I know your name? What you are doing in my class? Wow. Can just enter in someone's class, huh? You guys do that also? Okay, so after that we have precondition. What is precondition? What is precondition?
The condition criteria before you start.
Condition criteria before we start. Start what?
Yeah. The condition must be met before we can conduct the test.
Okay, so here is actually a test case which need to be passed for you to start the execution of this test case, or any condition which need to be passed for you to execute this test case. Okay, so normally I will let you guys decide how you want to write the precondition. For example, for us to do the login function, what is the precondition? What is the precondition for login function?
Account has been registered.
Yeah, so student must be registered with a valid student ID and password. Or what you can do is you can directly indicate which test case. You should have another person or another test case which is testing the registration part. Am I right? So you can mention that particular test case ID must be passed. So there is 2 ways how you can write condition. Either you directly put as a statement, or you can put which test case must be passed. Because if I don't do the registration test case, can I do the login test case? be passed. So you can directly use back the test case ID that it must be passed. Okay. Okay, another one more thing. When you are putting your test case ID, you are going to combine with your system name, your module name, and then your test case number. Okay. CC stands for test case. Your number should be start from 001. Got it? So there will be no possibilities even you to repeat the same ID. Because you have 5, right? So 001 until 5. So another person, the module name will be different. So there will be no repetition of the ID. Must be unique. Okay. So test case name, like what I mentioned just now. For example, buyer login. So here you describe more to test buyer login with valid what? Email. Email, right? Email and password, for example. Okay, so the others all no need. You know, right? The system module all. Okay, so for the precondition here, you can mention either buyer must register with valid email and password, or you want to put that buyer must have an account, valid account also can, or either one way, not putting both of it. Let's assume my login is my second test case. You can put it this way. So it's either, that means your test case 001 is a registration function. Okay, so it's either you put as a statement, or you can directly put the ID of the test case which do the registration, and it must be passed. Got it? So the precondition is not necessary for every test case. Only if your test case have a precondition, then you fill it up that part. If no, means just leave them blank. Okay. So after that we have this table. Okay, this table is actually for your function. What is the action? So if you see this test case template compared to this one, don't have test data as a separate column. So in that situation, you will combine your test action together with your test data. Got it? So for example, maybe first, what is it? You are testing what? App, right? Or web. So I need to mention like to navigate to the Shopee, all those, right? Okay, for example, then you put what is the URL, because that should be the data. Right? Enter valid email. So you put, what is the email? Okay, and then password. Because I'm testing with the valid email and password, right? So I'm going to put it there. Okay, then after that, okay, got it? Okay, so I combine the action together with the data because I don't have a separate column for the data. Got it? Okay, so now for the expected system response. Okay, sometimes certain test action don't have any response until the last action. When you click the last one, then only it will give a certain response. But sometimes some system, each of it already have its own response. So in that situation, you need to fill up the response based on the action. So when I navigate to Shopee homepage using the URL, is there any response? Is there any response? Yes, because it needs to display the homepage, right? Okay, something like that. So when I enter the email, any response? Any response happen? When I enter password, any response happen? No. When I click login button, yes, what should be the response? What you expect? I give valid email, valid password, what we expect? Okay, let's assume. Okay, so this is the expected system response. Okay, so now after that, this one I put it on hold first. Post condition. Okay, as how we have pre-condition, we also have post condition. Okay, pre-condition means what are the conditions which we need to pass or we need to achieve before we can do the test execution. But post-condition is after the test execution happened. It means I have done the action, okay, until the last action. What will be the condition of the application or system after the execution here? Okay, so let's assume the buyer is successfully logging to the account. What happened to the application? Is it having anything else? I mean, like, is it moving to profile page, or is it popping up any messages or something? What happened when it successfully logged in? What happened? It means what is the final condition of the application after the test execution happened based on our expected system response there. When you log into Shopee, what happened after that? When it successfully logged in, what happened?
Show the main page.
Display the main page. Correct? Okay, so now all this data except the status, pass or fail and comments must be filled up by the designer who designed the test case. Got it? So the pass, fail and the comments will be leave it blank for the tester who will execute the test case to fill it up. Got it? You can understand? So when we design the test case, this test case need to be reviewed, need to be approved. Then only it will be used for the test execution later. So that's why test design date must be earlier than the test execution date. Okay, and post condition cannot be empty. It's not optional like precondition. Post condition must be filled up according to the expected system response. Okay, and here the person who will conduct the test, okay, they need to fill up either it's a pass or fail. So let's assume there is no issue, then we fill up pass. So let's assume I give a valid username, I give a valid email, valid password, but it is fail. So fail means our actual system response is not tally with the expected system response. But if you see this template, there is one column for actual result. But for your assignment, we don't have that in the template given. Okay, so now how we will know what is the actual result? How we will know what is the actual result or actual system response when there is no column for it? According to this status. So when we set pass, it means this is the actual system response, correct? That's why it's pass, because what I actually see is tally with the expected given system response. So that's why I put pass. But let's assume when our actual system response is something else, then what is mentioned in the expected here, we put it fail. So under the comments here, you need to indicate what actual system response happened. That's how we will know where is the issue. Got it? Can you understand? So only for the fail status, you need to indicate the comments. If it's pass, no need to put anything. Leave it blank. So what can be possibilities happen here? To make it fail. Okay, just for example. Got it? Can you understand how we can work on a test case template? So that's why test case template is giving us a detailed test steps or test action which we need to use to execute or which we need to use to test a test item. So our test item here is the login function. So to test that login function, what will be the action and what will be the data which we need to use. Okay? Okay, so these are the items on the test case. So this is the test case template which I have discussed already. So this is an example of test case using the change pin functionality. So all this is example. So you can refer to it how you can write the statements. Okay, so creation of the test case, continuation of the creation of test case. So once the requirement specification has been reviewed and approved by the reviewers, then we can start to prepare the test cases. Okay, so the same thing goes once we're done with the test cases, then we will be continue with the reviewing of the test case also. Okay, and then the test case will be distributed to the team members for the review and to execute later. Okay, so this is an example for login function just now. So if we want to test to validate the admin login function, so like what I've mentioned, we can have 3 test cases. One is the positive test case, or to see the success of the login by giving the valid username, valid password, and then we can have 2 negative test case to test on the unsuccess of the login by providing invalid username or invalid password. Okay. So here the changes will be, let's assume you are going to do the buyer login. So you just change here, maybe invalid email and valid password. Got it? Okay. Okay, so test case review. So once we're done with the test case creation, so test case review. So I have been keep on saying this positive test case, negative test case from the beginning for the 10 weeks now. Okay, so what is positive test case? What is negative test case? The comparison between positive test case and negative test case. So for your assignment, you are going to prepare test case combination of these two. Okay. So when we say positive test case, it means we are preparing the test case to test the functionality exactly as how it is designed. So how a login function has been designed. To accept a valid username, valid password, and when we click login, it's supposed to do the login function. This is how the design has been done. So when we set positive test case, it means we want to test the function as how it is designed. So it means we want to see the success of the function. Okay. So the first key point here is to test the function as how it is designed. Okay, then the second is to see the success of the function. Okay, and then the third one is we are not trying to break any of the rule, and we want to test in a normal environment. So if I have true path, false path, it means I'm doing the true path only. I give a valid data, I do the correct steps, I test the function as how it is supposed should work in a normal environment. This is positive test case. Got it? When it comes to negative test case, okay, let me add here. Okay, so when it comes to negative test case, it means we are not testing the function as how it is designed. So when I say not as how it is designed, it means we are breaking some rules and to see how the system react to it. So now I'm going on the false part. So when I give invalid username, when I give invalid password, I want to see how the system will react to it. So am I seeing success of the function here? When I said negative test case, am I testing the success of the function here? Or am I testing for the success of the error handling here? Error handling. So negative test case, we are actually providing the invalid data. We are breaking the rules to see how is the system reaction. So we want to see the success of the error handling of the system. Got it? Can understand? So, positive test case. How many test cases we can have? For each of the function, how many positive test cases we can have? Only one. Only one. It means everything is correct. Only one. But when it comes to negative test case, we always have more numbers than the positive test case, because we can check by using invalid username, we can check by invalid password. If I didn't enter anything, what happened? So there is more scenarios of the error handling can happen. Okay, got it? So our purpose of negative test case is, this is not how it is designed. So when something is not okay, when there is certain rules has been break, what happened? That is what we want to see. Okay. Okay, so when we said negative test case, it can be involved with any invalid data. Okay, it can be outside of the boundaries data. It can be using larger than the expected field data. Okay, so all this can be how we can come up with a negative test case. What type of invalid data which we can use? So different function will have different requirement, different type of invalid data. Okay, other than positive or negative test cases, as part of the test case review, we can also prepare the test case which is covering the non-functional area. So it means we want to see the performance of the test case to see when it's involved with a large amount of data or large workload, large number of users. So we want to see how is the performance. So the same test case, we can also use it for non-functional testing. So let's assume we have the same template, and I ask you to use this template to prepare for stress test, or for performance test, or for load test. Can you use it? Can you use it? Yes. Are you going to have a very long step actions like functional testing? No. Because our aim here is, when we give large number of data, large number of user, what happened? So our test action will not be similar like functional testing. But what we want to see is when the number of data, for example, I give 10 data, what happened? When I give 100 data, what happened? When I give 1000 user, what happened? So we can still have the expected system response, the actual system response, and the pass rate. But we don't have a detailed step action like functional testing. That's the difference. So the test case can be also used for the non-functional testing, for example, for performance, or for load, or for stress testing. Other than that, also for security testing. So when we give any valid data, or sorry, when we give valid access, what happened? When we give any invalid access, what happened? We want to see how the security breaching can happen. Okay, how people can hack the system. So we can use the test case template to prepare for security testing also. Other than that, of course, we can use the test case for recreation testing. Every time when there is changes happen, we need to conduct recreation testing. Am I right? So every time there is modification happen, we will modify the same test case and then to conduct the recreation testing. So when we are preparing the test case, we need to review the test case according to these areas. Okay, but for functional testing, it will be more to positive, negative. So if it's non-functional, then it can be depends on what type of non-functional testing we are conducting. Okay, got it? So characteristic of good test case. So when we are preparing a test case, how a test case suppose should be. Okay, so these are the characteristics. So a good test case must be accurate. So it means all the details which we are including into the test case must be accurate. So if the data, the details are not accurate, then we cannot get the result as what we expect. Okay, then our test case must be economical. So there should be no unnecessary steps or words needed or being used there. Okay, we need to use a direct steps how the function can be tested or how the whatever testing we are conducting. Okay, then the third characteristic is traceable. So every test case must have unique identifier so that we can trace back with the requirement. So what is the requirement? What is the test case for that requirement? So when we prepare the test case, we able to trace back the test case to the right requirement. And then repeatable, okay, can be used to perform the testing over and over. So let's assume whenever we need to retest, when we need to repeat the testing, the test case must not block us from doing that. Then reusable, so whenever we want to reuse the test case must allow us to reuse them. Okay, especially any basic or main functions which is kind of similar in many systems. Like every system has registration, every system has login. So we can reuse the same test case with minor changes here and there. Okay, so this will be the 5 characteristics of good test cases. Okay, done. That is about the test case. Any question about the test case? Any question about the test case? All okay? Okay, so the next part of chapter 7 is test readiness review. So test readiness review, the purpose is to provide our management. So let's assume we are a testing team here, testing company here. So to provide our management with the assurance that the software has undergo a thorough test process and is ready to the next test phase. Okay, or is ready for turnover to the next phase. So if you see, we have different testing level. Am I right? Still remember? From the smallest to the biggest one. What is it? Testing level. We always start with the unit and then we move to module, we move to subsystem, we move to system. Am I right? So we have this. Okay. So every time when the system need to move from one test level or one test phase to another test phase, we cannot simply move it. Okay? We cannot simply move it. So we have to make sure that the system has done a thorough testing in the current test phase and it's ready to move to the next phase. So we need to conduct the test readiness review to confirm these two sides. One is at the current test phase. So let's assume at the unit. Okay, so now the unit test has been done. So we need to give assurance that the the unit has been tested, everything is done, everything is complete. Now it is ready to move to the next level. So at the next level, the preparation also need to be done. If the preparation is not done, and we cannot simply move the unit into a module. So that's why we need to do the review to make sure that the current phase, the test result must be inspected. So it means to inspect the test product and the test result which is completed at the current phase, and also to verify how is the preparation on the next phase. So for example, if they need to prepare test case, if they need to set up test data, test environment. So if the preparation of the next phase is done or not. So once it's completed here and once the preparation is done here, then we can move the unit into the next level of testing. So every time when we complete the testing at one phase and we want to move to the next phase, we must conduct the test readiness review. So this review is to confirm that the result of the current phase of the testing and the preparation of the next phase of testing. So our management need to know that. Our client need to know that. We cannot simply move the system into here and there. Okay. So let's see. Okay, we have two types of review, which is informal review and formal review. So like what we have discussed in chapter 3. So informal review may not include any formal meeting, no documentation, reporting, follow-ups and so on. So formal review means it's going to have a proper way. So it means we'll have a formal meeting, we'll have a formal reporting, formal follow-up, rework and so on. So here formal review will be conducted in each of the applications, start from the integration level and on. Whatever below that, it's still in a small sizing. So when it's small sizing, it is not required to conduct in a formal review. Informal review is sufficient enough for that. Okay. So normally when it comes to integrated as a system and then move to the client side or implement at the enterprise side, then we will require formal review. But when it comes just a unit size, still at the development side, informal review is sufficient. Okay. Okay, so there will be 3 levels of the test readiness review. So the first level is at the application level. There will be 3 levels under the application level. Application level means at the software development side. Okay. Then we have 2 levels at the enterprise. Enterprise means at the client side. Got it? Application means at the software development side. Enterprise means at the client side. So under the software development side, the 3 levels is development test readiness review, project test readiness review, enterprise test readiness review. Okay. So development test readiness review will be conducted in an informal review. Okay, informal review after we have completed the unit or the module testing. Okay, it's still in a unit or module, not a system yet. So it will be conducted in an informal review. So once we have completed the unit testing or module testing, we want to move to the software integration testing. We will conduct development test readiness review to confirm the result coming from the unit module testing and to confirm the preparation of the software integration testing before we move it to them. Okay. So this development test readiness review will be conducted after we complete the unit module testing before we will do software integration testing. Okay. The second one, project test readiness review, will be start as a formal. Okay. So this test readiness review will be conducted after we complete the software integration test and before we start functional validation test. So we check on the result from the software integration test and we check the preparation of the functional validation test. Got it? Okay, the third one, enterprise test readiness review, will be a formal review to be conducted after we complete the functional validation test and before we will move to the enterprise side to conduct the enterprise integration test. So we have done at one side, we want to move it to the next side, so we will conduct the review. So enterprise test readiness review will be after we complete the functional validation test and we are done with the development side, at the software development side, and we want to move to the enterprise side. Okay, so at the enterprise side, we will start with the enterprise integration test first. Don't get confused between software integration test and enterprise integration test. Software integration test means we are integrating within the software. The modules we integrate become a software, complete software. But when we say enterprise integration, it means our software will be integrated at the client side. Client environment, client hardware, client software. If they have any other system, we need to integrate with those systems too. Okay, so this is more bigger integration. So after we have completed enterprise integration test and performance test, okay, we will conduct the acceptance test readiness review before we will move to the enterprise acceptance test. Okay, we check on the result from the enterprise integration and performance test before we will move to the enterprise acceptance test. Okay, and then after we completed the enterprise acceptance test, we will conduct implementation of test readiness review to confirm that we have completed all the acceptance tests and now the system will be ready to use by the client. So if you see the flow here, each of this review will be reviewing the result of this test and the preparation of the next step or next test phase. This review will be review on this test, the preparation of the next test. So this review will be review on this result and the preparation at the enterprise side. Okay, so the same thing goes, this one will review the result from this test and the preparation for next test. So that's why the test readiness review, the scope here is to inspect on the result of the current test phase and the preparation of the next phase. Is both done or not? So when we do the test, if the result all is okay, and we check on the next phase, is the preparation all okay, then we move from this level to this level. So every time when we do the moving from one test phase to another test phase, we need to conduct the review to give this review result to the management. That is what mean by test readiness review. Got it? Clear? Okay. Why you are laughing? You always laugh and create trouble, huh? It's you. Okay, just give me another few more minutes. I will complete chapter 8 because chapter 8 is the last part of the STLC and very little things. It's about the data. Okay, so this is the part 3 of the the software testing life cycle, which is about the test data generation and also the test environment readiness. Just now is the test readiness. This one is test environment readiness. Okay. So test data generation. So when we are going to prepare our test case to test the test item, we need to know what test data we want to use. Okay, how we are going to generate those data. So test data generation is a process of creating a set of data. This data can be randomly generated data or it can be structuredly generated data. Structuredly means refer to a given requirement, fulfill the structure according to the requirement, but both of it will be using test data generator. So the purpose of test data generation here is because we need the data for our testing purpose. Okay, so it's either we use the randomly generated data or structurally generated data for us to proceed with our testing. We need to know how the data will be. Okay, so sometimes in some situation we might use actual data also. Actual data means like the live data or the production data which is being stored daily from the daily transactions or daily how to say, like maybe daily sales happen, and then that data will be stored. So that live data, that production data can be also used. Or we can also create artificial data which is similar to the live data. So it's depend with what system we are working on, what is the level of the testing we are doing. Okay, and then we can decide what data we want to use. Okay, so using a real data, so it means we want to use the live production data which is coming from the day-to-day business operation. So it means we have access on the database on the server where the daily transaction or operation data has been stored. Okay, so certainly it can be useful to use the real data, but it is not really suitable for all level of testing, especially when it comes to unit level or user acceptance testing. Is not really suitable because real data is always in a large amount. When we have a large amount of data, it will be difficult for us to get the right amount of data which we need for our unit. Because your unit is required very little data. But when we say that we want to take from the real data, you need to do cleaning. Okay, you need to filter out the data, and it might be difficult to get our test objective to be fulfilled. Okay. Sometimes this test data will be stored from the previous test execution which has been done using the real data, and the real data will be stored and we can use the real data for our testing purpose. Okay, it depends with the companies. Okay, then second option is generate data at random. So this can be very powerful. Okay, where we can randomly generate the data. We can generate large amount of data randomly, but it might not really in a good quality because it's not fulfilling any certain requirement. Okay, so it might be suitable for maybe load testing, stress testing, performance testing, which need the large amount of data, but it will not look at the characteristic of the data because it is not really following any requirement for any specific functions. Okay, so it can be useful for this type of data testing, and it might be similar to the live data, but it's going to be different because of the characteristic. Let's assume when we are randomly generating data, it can be a general data where it can be fit with any type of requirement because it is not following a certain requirement or certain specification given. So it might be look like the live data, but it will be a bit different when it comes to the characteristic. Okay. Then the third option is to select the data from a fixed pool. So let's assume we cannot use the live data, we don't have the generator to generate the data. So we go with the third option, which is the fixed pool. So fixed pool is normally like software testing company, they have a database of the data which they have been stored for testing purpose. So this can be coming from the real data which used from the previous testing, or it can be the data which they have generated for the previous testing. Okay, so from the live data we can access and then we can also use it for our testing purpose. Sometimes it can directly fit, but sometimes it cannot directly fit, so we have to do the selection based on what our data characteristic we need to fulfill for the current testing. Okay, so that will be the three ways how we can use data. Either use the real data, or we can generate as a random data, or we can use the data come from the fixed database. Okay, so as part of the test data generation, okay, so let's assume we decided to generate the data. So we have four different types of test data generators, which is a random test data generator, goal-oriented test data generator, pathwise test data generator, and intelligent test data generator. Okay, so the first one is the randomly generating the data. So it means the test data generator will randomly generate the bit stream and convert into the input type which will be needed for our testing purpose. So it means it will randomly generate, then we need to do some modification on the data according to the specification which we need to fulfill. Okay, so among the four generators, this one is the simplest test data generator because it can be fast, because it's randomly generating, and it can be the simplest because it is not following any specific requirement, and it can be openly used for many different programs. Okay, so it can be used to generate input for any type of the program because there is no specific to be fulfilled. Okay, but the disadvantage here, since it's a randomly generated data, it cannot guarantee on the quality of the data, or it can be low coverage based on if it's not fulfilling any of the specification which we need to fulfill. Okay, then the second one is the goal-oriented test data generator. This one is using the control flow graph to generate the input for any path which is specified. So remember, control flow graph, we identify the path. So it will use the path to generate the input from them. So if you see here, it is not randomly generating, but it is generating based on the source code, on the path which we identify from the source code. Okay, so path selection here is blind. Okay, it can find any input for any path. So let's assume from the control flow graph you get 10 different paths. Okay, so this test data generator will blindly generate the input for all the 10 paths. So that actually a disadvantage for this test data generator, because it is not smartly able to select, okay, this function or this path, this is this is the data. Okay, but it is going to select from all the path you have identified. So this can be a disadvantage. Okay, opposite of that, we have this pathwise test data generator. So this pathwise test data generator is similar to the goal oriented, which is also using the control flow graph. So it means from the source code, it come up with the control flow graph, and then we have the path selected. Then this test data generator can generate the data using the specific path. So each path, it know that this path, the test data which is generated is actually specifically for this one. So the disadvantage from the goal oriented, where it is not smart enough to select the right path, the right data, but it will blindly generate the data for all the path in the control flow graph, has been overcome with this. So where it can use the specific path, and then it can generate the data based on that specific path. So the input is actually based on the program, the source code, and then based on the path, based on the coverage, it will generate the test data. Okay, so compared to the goal oriented, this test data generator is actually much more better, because it can choose the right path and it can generate the data according to that path. Okay, but of course the disadvantage here, it's actually where it is required the knowledge and the predication of the coverage. Okay, then the last one is the intelligent test data generator. So this intelligent test data generator is not randomly generating any data, and it is not dealing with the path from the control flow graph. But this is directly analyzing the source code, and from the source code it can search for the test data, and it will generate the test data based on the analysis has been done on the source code. So here it can be much more faster, where it can analyze the source code and it will generate straight from the source code without any control flow graph path. So compared to the random, compared to the goal oriented and the pathwise, this is considered much more effective and much more faster. Okay, but the disadvantage here, when it's smart, when it's intelligent, then there will be a complexity to handle on the analyzing of the source code. Okay, so that should be the 4 different test data generator. So for your assignment, you need to have your test data. Am I right? Which test data generator? Okay, before that, the 3 way how we can select the data. Can you use the real data? Are you having any access on the real data? Are you going to generate the data? Are you going to generate the data? Because you don't have the access on the real data, you don't have any fixed pool data, so you have the only option, you need to generate the data. Am I right? So out of these 4, which test data generator will be suitable for you to use? Of course, only the random. Okay, because we don't have access on the source code. Am I right? For your assignment, we only see from the outside. We don't have access on the source code, so we cannot use the goal oriented, we cannot use the pathwise, we cannot use the intelligent test data generator. So for your assignment, in your test environment requirement, you need to put your test data. Am I right? So you can mention that this data has been randomly generated. If you don't want to put also, no problem. Okay, because you just need to indicate what data valid data, invalid data you will need for your test case preparation later. Okay? Okay, so data verification. So when we are selecting the data, when we are generating the data, data verification is very important because we need to verify if the data which we are using is the right data or not. Okay, of course we have this test data generator, we have the test builder which can help us to create the test input or the test data input, but it will be still come back to the tester's responsibility to verify if this data is correct data or not. No matter how you are using generator, you will still need your own human checking to verify if this data is correct according to the requirement or not. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is the test environment readiness. So just now we discussed about test readiness, but this one is test environment readiness. So before we can say that test environment has been prepared or has been set up as part of your test entry criteria, you must conduct the test environment readiness review. So test environment here is the collection of all the software, hardware, network, data, devices or any equipment which you need to set up together for your test execution. That is what we call as a test environment. So when we want to set up this test environment, when we want to use the test environment, we need to check on the readiness. Is the test environment ready or not? Before we can say that, okay, we have fulfilled our test environment entry criteria. Okay, so test environment readiness guidelines. Okay, how we are going to set up the test environment, it always based on the requirement, stakeholders requirement, testing team requirement. Okay, so whenever our testing team is being used by multiple teams means different project, different testing team might be dealing with somehow similar testing environment. So we have to make sure that there is a proper management how we can handle the testing environment. Then the second guideline is centralized way of managing the test environment and test data. So whenever we deal with multiple teams working on multiple projects, how we can avoid any overlapping. So whenever there is any overlapping happen, we must make sure there is no complication happen, especially on the environment or especially on the test data. So we have to make sure that how we can have a centralized managing way. Okay. Then test environment management strategy. So they must have a clear-cut and effective way how we can manage and provide guidance to every team members. So they have to make sure that how they need to handle, they need to know how they should handle the test environment. So this should be also have overall monitoring. So whenever there is any issue on the environment, we have to make sure that we arrange the environment accordingly so that there will be no wastage of environment. There is no unused things on the environment happen. Okay. Then the fourth one is the multiple types round cycle of testing. When we are setting up our test environment, it must able to support multiple types of testing. It must able to support multiple round of testing or cycle of testing. So if our test environment is not stable to support all this, then it will be giving problem. So it must not affect the testing environment whenever we deal with multiple types of testing or multiple round of testing. Okay, so we have to make sure that to identify what environment, what data can be shared and cannot be shared. Okay, then the last part is the test deliverables. So test deliverables is part of our testing. Test deliverables here referring to the documentation, artifacts or the documentation which we are preparing during our testing phase. So like what I have mentioned, we have 3 different phases where we need to produce documentation. Before the testing, while doing the testing or during the testing, and after the testing. We have different documentation which we need to prepare in each of these phases. Whatever we need to prepare before, we do before. Whatever we do while we are executing the testing, we do during the testing. And there is some which we need to produce after we completed the testing. So our test deliverables can be different types of deliverables at different phases of the testing. Okay, so this is some of the not all, some of the deliverables. So if you see, we have test plan, test design specification, test case specification, test procedure specification, test item transmittal report, test log, test incident report, and test summary. So if you see, the first one is actually the preparation, the document which we need to prepare before the testing happen. Then the second one is during the test running happen, and then the test summary is after the completion of the testing. So out of this, you are just working on 2 documentation, and both of it is actually before the testing, which is your test plan and your test case. Okay, so which test deliverables are generated before and after testing? Test plan is before. Test case, test report, defect sheet and summary after. Okay, so normally during the testing, okay, we will start to prepare the incident report. We don't call it as a defect sheet, it's an incident report. So whenever there is defect or any incident happen, we need to keep track of it. But when it comes to this defect sheet and summary, we combine everything and we give after the testing. Okay, so that's it for our chapter 8. So I'm done with today's lecture.
Please.